We hear the word burnout everywhere we go now. But what if burnout isn't actually a full story? What if many leaders, caregivers, and high performers are experiencing some deeper cumulative nervous system overload, moral distress, and psychological cost of carrying too much for too long? What if today's guest could help you with this issue? Now, Laurinda Calongne brings both lived experience and decades of executive leadership in crisis healthcare systems to conversion. She has led through hurricanes of floods, pandemics, and system disruption. And after years of being strong, her own body finally forced her to stop. This is not a conversation about stress. It's about conversation about what prolonged responsibility does to the body, the mind, leadership, and the systems that we work inside every day. Now, my guest today, Laurinda Calongne, she is an author, executive leader, trauma trained social worker, and founder. She has spent more than 30 years leading in healthcare and high pressure environments, helping people and organizations navigate crisis, recovery, and sustainable well being. And instead of viewing it as personal weakness or lack of resilience, Laurinda helps us see what the result of the cumulative stress, nervous system strain, moral injury, and organizational patterns that keep people in survival mode for too long. And she also is the author of Still Standing. Now, today, I want to welcome you, Laurinda, to the show. I am very excited to have you on our show today.
Thank you so much, Stacey.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I just, I want to just start here. I want to get to the gun though, because this is really about the heart of your message. You say that we often call burnout is something that is misnamed. Like, what do you actually mean about that?
I think instead of let me just kind of set this stage for you. Burnout, the evidence tells us, exists. Burnout is real. It is driven by long the stress of a work environment that causes lack of recognition, emotional exhaustion, dysregulation. But what if it's not just burnout? Because I can share with you my personal experience. I think thank you for introducing me, and you've already shared with your audience a little bit about my background and that I'm a trauma trained clinician. I'm a trauma trained social worker. I come with that clinical mindset and clinical approach to mental health. And I was leading a national initiative at my hospital, and we looked at the 6 drivers of burnout. We specifically were focusing on physicians, but also held focus groups for nurses, physicians, allied health. And when I tell you, we actually received national recognition because we addressed those drivers and that burnout head on. We developed all these, programmatic changes to the work environment. But in the focus groups, I noticed something different. And it wasn't just what was happening at work, it's the fact that people had lost their homes, their vehicles. They were living in shelters, but still showing up to work their shifts at a hospital. I started just going back to my own childhood adverse events, and those were all related to natural disasters and
Right.
trauma from losing homes. That this is where your family structure, this is where your family connects, and it's gone. All that is gone from you. Pictures, it's your memory bank is
Yeah.
gone. And one of the things that really started to well, it was not my aha moment. It was my friend Dr. Gigi Dunn. She's a trauma specialist, and she said, you know you're treating the wrong symptom. What you're treating is symptoms. Burnout is a symptom, can be a symptom of something deeper. And what we're seeing is really moral distress and moral injury. And
Mhm.
that's what intrigued me because I had experienced it firsthand. And I
Right.
felt like burnout has become, just in my opinion, overused. We use it for everything now. And when something with any topic or subject begins being overused, we start to generalize it and come up with solutions that, oh, this hospital did this, so let's, and it's all evidence based, but I was just seeing something deeper and really started to ask questions of how does trauma and cumulative stress over the years of consistently showing up for others while not taking care of yourself, what is that doing to
Right.
people?
So
And
what
that
you're
was the
saying,
main motivation. Yeah, that was my motivation for the book.
I love it. I truly love it because it seems like what you're saying is that the roots go much deeper than that, just
Hmm.
the word burnout and the symptom behind it.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. It's a great, thankfully, I want to thank my colleagues who brought burnout and the years of research that demonstrate it does exist. It is a workplace organizational stress, what that does to people, but it's not the only conversation we should be having.
Right.
Mhm.
How do you help people understand the difference between ordinary stress, true burnout, and moral injury?
Yeah. You know, this is how this is I like to tell stories or give examples. And
Yeah.
so, let me do that with
Hmm.
this. Ordinary stress is, life is stressful. We can't
Yeah.
escape stress in our life,
Right.
but it's how we cope with that. So, when you're sleeping right, when you're connecting with others, with a support system, uh, when you're getting movement, when you're physical and as an outlet for your stress, those, that's like it's stressful. Here's an event. I have the tools to get through it.
Hmm.
Cumulative stress is when there's no chance to recover.
Yeah.
So, and so when I think of that, the easiest thing for me, having been from South Louisiana and
Yeah.
going through this myself, it's hurricane season for
Right.
growing up. It was, is this going to be the year? And Stacey, unfortunately, it's been probably every 3 or 4 years
Right.
for me growing up. So the cumulative stress is I work in healthcare. I'm a medical social worker.
Hmm.
The first call this morning was um, a 2-month-old child is being brought in unresponsive. And I
Right.
walk in that ER to the crying wails of the parents. And that little 2-month-old looks just like my daughter, Emily, um, who is 2 months old. It's my first day back from maternity leave. And so that trauma of, oh my goodness, that just doesn't happen to anybody every day.
Yeah.
That was a traumatic event. Um, and so I come home and my husband shares with me that there's a hurricane in the Gulf and it looks like it's headed to New Orleans and we need to pack up and try to get to Baton Rouge as soon as possible. So
Right.
I'm packing up with a 2-month-old. We have to find relatives we can go stay with and then just layer that. Then, you lose your home to flooding.
Right.
You lose your job. The hospital is not open anymore. So, and that's what I'm talking about cumulative stress. It's
Yeah.
layered, layered, layered.
Right.
And then before you know it, a year has gone by and you're still trying to recover.
Yeah.
2 years has gone by. And then there's going to be another. I worked at a hospital in Houma, Louisiana, and I worked on a psych unit and I was a psych tech.
Hmm.
And on the way to my car one day, a coworker stopped me and said, "Did you hear what happened to Jimmy?" And I said, "No, what happened to Jimmy?" He was just shot across the hospital. So a person I had just left a clinic with 10 minutes ago was shot and killed.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and this is just these are examples of what happens to people and it happens to all of us, hopefully not to some extremes, but we all experience severe stress in life. But it's when you don't have a chance to recover,
Yeah.
when it's just layered on top of the other. And that's cumulative stress, cumulative strain.
Right.
And then, um, I love that moral distress and moral injury are now making its way into the conversation.
Hmm.
So, for instance, anyone who works in healthcare, let's say healthcare, education, law enforcement, I'm thinking specifically those high stress industries.
Hmm.
I think about child protection services. You're a social worker.
Yeah.
You've done a home assessment. This child is being abused,
Hmm.
but you don't have all the evidence you need for the court to step in.
Right.
And you go home at night knowing and worrying about that child, and you will worry about that child for years.
Hmm.
Um, it's the law enforcement officers who see the the most traumatic experience events. They're part of that every day
Yeah.
and don't have anyone to go home and talk to about it. And so
Right.
they just the next day it's just an additional crisis that's layered on top of it. Um, so what I for me, moral distress is knowing the right thing to do,
Yeah.
but not being able to do it because
Hmm.
of politics and regulations and accreditation standards. And that, in my opinion, from what I experienced after 30 years, I see more of that than I see of burnout.
Right.
Moral distress to me should be the number one risk factor of people working in high stress, high crisis systems.
Yes, I agree with you. It feels like this conversation is especially timely right now because people are carrying so much. There is workplace, instability, there's, leadership fatigue, there's economic pressure, there's constant change. And, for a lot of people, a sense that they have to keep performing no matter what. Are you seeing more people who are outwardly looking high functioning, but internally they're just totally depleted?
Oh, Stacey, that's 90% of the people I know. To be real with you. And in my line of work, I am an executive coach. I specialize in burnout. So I do and depletion. So this is my lane. So there's probably some bias in that, but uh, just I can tell you after 36 years of in the workplace, 90% of what I saw, if I had to categorize it, would have been moral distress and not burnout.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I don't, I think what's happening in the workplace, especially since the pandemic, is workplace shortages of staff. So
Yeah.
I think even when you're like I'm intentional about this, I want to have boundaries. I don't want to have to and your employee is saying we're going to do everything we possibly can, but
Hmm.
can't find enough staff
Yeah.
to show up. And so I think, what staffing has the staffing shortage, workplace demands, um, because of, we used to have five people doing the job. Now we have two, and those two we worry about because they've absorbed the work of three additional people.
Hmm.
And as a business owner, I might be trying to hire people as quickly as I can. I can't find people that want to work and do this specific job function.
Right.
So I think it's all of that. I don't think it's anybody's fault. There's no blame game in this. It's
Right.
what I'm asking is that we just take a pause and have a
Hmm.
conversation
Right.
about what is really happening here. How
I
is
agree.
it affecting me, you, our team members, and how do we get through it together?
Right. Oh, 100%. Now that really resonates because some of the most capable people are often the last ones to realize that they're in trouble. They're still delivering, still leading, and still showing up, but they're paying the price. What are some of the early signs that a leader or a high performer is operating in their nervous system overload, like even when they haven't crashed yet?
Yeah, I think the first thing is sleep. If someone starts to describe, disturbed sleeping sleeping is where it usually starts to happen.
Yeah.
Um, Tension, headaches. So, the body and the spaces you might see it is headaches, maybe even might to the extent of migraines,
Right.
GI upsets, always feeling tired.
Mhm.
And despite 8 hours of sleep, they've just had such a delay. and healthy sleep patterns that they just can't catch up with one day.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that, is the emotional, the irritability. Um, and if it's not irritability, it's like zoning out. Like I can't, my nervous system cannot handle anything right now. So I
Mhm.
look like I'm disengaged, but actually I'm just trying to recover. I'm just trying, my nervous system is saying, pause.
Mhm.
I need to recover. And so I always tell people is like, just ask questions, um, with as much kindness as we can.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the first thing is, you can't lead others if you don't lead yourself. And
Exactly.
I am the perfect example of what happens when you do that.
Mhm.
And, until my own physical collapse of two major health events, it was all about, I was a servant leader. I was there for you. You can call me, contact me 24/7. I built credibility and a respectable um, reputation on being very quick to respond, being
Right.
a very, uh, I approach things as being fair and always put others first. And,
Right.
now I think back, gosh, I wish someone had stopped me and said, when you're boarding a plane, the first thing they do, the flight
Mhm.
attendant tells you is put that oxygen mask on yourself because
Yeah.
I have to tell you, girl, I was not putting that oxygen mask on myself for 20 something years. And it caught up. It caught up to me.
It does catch up. It really does. Oh my goodness. Your message is powerful because it's not just professional, it's personal. You've lived this. You led others through hurricanes, floods, pandemics, and systematic crises. And at the height of COVID, your own body signaled that this cumulative stress has reached a breaking point. Can you take us into that moment and
Yeah.
what changed for you?
Yeah. I um I was at a meeting in Chicago and my elbow started to swell. And and it was really warm to the touch. And I happened to be in a meeting with doctors. Um, and there was a trauma surgeon sitting next to me, and I said, I'm going to board a plane this afternoon, and like I just need to know, is it safe? Like, got this, I need to go see somebody, and he felt it, and he said, "Are you on hormones?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Laurinda, this could be a clot. I don't want you to get on a plane. Let's walk over to." There was a urgent care. Northwestern Hospital wasn't far from there, so I walked over
Yeah.
there, and Stacey, I honestly thought it was orthopedic stuff. It was like, oh, this is going to be fine. And
Yeah.
the nurse asked me for a urine sample, and I realized I had not urinated in 2 days,
Oh, wow.
and I could not produce urine. So, long story short, it was something called rhabdomyolysis, and it is a inflammation of the skeletal muscle that surrounds the bone. And my kidneys and liver had both been hit really hard, and my kidneys were starting to fail. So that led to a 4-day hospitalization. It was a 6-week recovery. Very, very, I had never felt exhaustion like that.
Wow.
And, I'm back at work but I'm noticing my balance is really off,
Yeah.
and I've got fluid coming out of my ear. And it's like, oh my, like what is happening? Like now my body, my body is starting, I don't quite understand what's happening. And
Yeah.
I I was in a meeting with a friend who was an ENT doctor, and I said, I just came back from the beach. I think I have some water in my ear. Can you just check it for me? And
Yeah.
he, I followed him back to his office. He looked in my ear and said, we need to get a couple of specialists in here. Laurinda, I think you're going to need brain surgery. And what, by the end of the day, I had seen a neurosurgeon and a neurologist, and my temporal bone, it's called an encephalocele, I'm sorry, an encephalocele tear. So
Mhm.
there were little tears in that bone, and my brain had started to herniate into my middle ear. And so that's what was causing what I thought was vertigo, and the ringing in the ear and the balance. And so at the height of COVID, I was admitted for brain surgery. My husband could not be with me. and I was in, neuro ICU, thankfully, at the
Yeah.
same hospital I worked. So my friends could come and take care of me, but incredibly scary moment in my
Wow.
life. And, when physicians say, if you get COVID, you're dead in 24 hours. If you get the flu, if you get meningitis, you're like, you, we have to get you into the OR, and they cut a lip. Anyway, I'm going to get disgusting, but they built me a plate, and now I'm okay. But within a matter of 3 months, a very healthy, playing pickleball, tennis, walking 3 miles, very
Wow.
healthy. And it knocked me for a loop. And it took me about 6 months to walk again because it damaged my nerve, the balance center of my brain.
Wow.
And during that, in that quiet, and I want to say it's probably the darkest I have ever felt in life.
Yeah.
During that very dark time is when I started to think about this book. And I knew that there was a reason why um, I was forced to stop and
Right.
pause.
Wow. That's such a profound shift from being the one who holds everything together to realizing that your body has been keeping score the whole time.
Mm.
What did that experience teach you about the hidden cost of over responsibility?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think for me, the lesson was I'm human.
Yeah.
I don't have superhuman power. I
Hmm.
have to take care of myself. Um, the lesson was I can't be any good for people if I'm not good to myself. And
Right.
so, ignoring symptoms, thinking I was doing all the right things, and I was exercising a lot, but I was still, I never hydrated enough. I still wasn't sleeping well.
Hmm.
I wasn't resting. For me, movement was my way of, as long as I can move, I'm expressing my stress. I'm getting it out, but
Yeah.
my body wasn't resting.
Right.
Um, for me, when I talk to people, I'm gonna tell you the story because it's really funny. I have gone to more breathing classes than I can count, and because I believe so strongly in work-life balance and teaching healthy, and I've gone to so many breathing classes, and I never implemented what I learned. It was just like it can't be that easy. It
Right.
can't be that easy. When I was at home recuperating, and someone sent me a podcast, and it was about the importance of breathing. I went back to a little folder I had that had all the breathing
Hmm.
techniques. I started breathing and immediately felt my stress reduce. And I
Wow.
thought, I've been having this tool all the time in my toolkit, and it just seemed too simple,
Yeah.
right? It's like that is breathing, that's so simple. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to go to a class. Like you just breathe.
Yeah.
So really implementing some things that I knew intellectually but never had practiced.
Right.
So, really focusing on sleep health, um, and on, the ability to rest and reset your
Yeah.
nervous system through breathing has been phenomenal for me.
Wow. And that's so true. Breathing is so powerful. I don't think many people realize how powerful
Mhm,
breathing
mhm.
is. You know, I want to spend a minute on moral injury because I think it is a concept more people are feeling, even when they don't have the language for it. How do you define moral injury and why is it so important in this conversation?
I think, for me, moral injury is something is unethical, something is in opposite to your own values
Hmm.
in life, and yet you partake in or are part of a situation um, that is not right.
Right.
So it's moral distress is an awareness of it, but
Hmm.
moral injury is you have been activated to participate in something that goes against everything you believe in, or is unethical.
Right. That's just, that's a very powerful distinction because it shifts the
Mhm.
story from I'm not coping well enough to I've been operating in conditions that have repeatedly violated
Yes.
what I know is right.
Hmm.
What
Right.
are some of the examples of moral injury showing up inside teams and leadership and
Mhm.
organizational life?
Oh gosh. Oh, um, ooh, I'm trying to think of, um, I'm gonna take a couple of politically, um, landmines. I hope,
Go ahead for it, girlfriend.
I'm cautious,
Go
but
ahead.
if it's, okay, let's say if you are a nurse or if you are someone who believes in contraceptive and women's health, um, and morally you feel like it's an obligation to help women optimize their health, and their ability to make a decision whether to have a child or not. And but you work in a Catholic healthcare system
Mm,
who forbids the use of prescription contraceptives
right.
for a large part of the population. That aligns with their values, like,
Hmm.
that aligns with their values. They feel very comfortable with that. But if you are someone who believes in fundamental women's health issues,
Right.
that will become, it goes against your values. You feel like you are doing harm to a
Hmm.
woman. So we could have two people, and one is that doesn't bother them at all, but one, um, will have to leave that environment
Right.
to truly, to truly operate in their own sense of well-being.
Right.
So I think that's like and I was hesitant to say it because I don't want to get into a debate. And I know people feel very strongly one side or the other, but I have seen it more from so many of my friends have expressed that to me. And I've had to make difficult decisions about that particular situation. Um, I think about my future son-in-law was a police officer and worked with abused children. And, to be the investigator, know that this child um, is going to be abused if they get sent home, and then go through the whole system, the whole process, and then come to find out the child is back with that family. And this sense of it doesn't matter what I do.
Hmm.
And I don't want to take that to the extent of moral injury, but like that, it's those kind of dilemmas.
Yeah.
And finally, my son-in-law just, I mean, he just said, I can't do this anymore. Like,
Yeah.
this goes against, I was hired to protect people, and I cannot protect these children. And so
Right.
that goes against everything. And he would tell you, like, this, I can't function in this. This is
Yeah.
not right. And even though, it's legal issues, but for him, it became, it wasn't just moral distress. He was injured by that.
Yeah. That's tough. That is.
Mhm.
I think when you're under those high pressure jobs and you see things and you're there to do a job, and there's a part of you that's emotionally wants to be involved and save the situation, but there's a part of you
Mhm.
where we're taught to
Mhm.
separate our emotions and
Mhm.
not feel for the other side and just do your
Mhm.
job.
Mhm.
To me,
Mhm.
that's a very hard task, and I see that a lot, especially like in the healthcare field. Nurses and doctors are taught to separate their emotions and to treat the patient and not let their emotions override
Mhm.
them. And
Mhm.
for me, I find that very, very hard. And
Yeah.
you have to feel
And
some type of stress or trauma.
and I have to tell you, I had a, chief medical officer at a hospital. I was in a meeting with him, and we had a young resident who made a mistake. And so we were having a meeting with that young resident, and he became very emotional, because what he did could have injured a child.
Right.
And he got really teary-eyed. And this physician said, well, first of all, there's no crying in healthcare.
Wow.
So whatever is happening here, you know, this can't happen. And it was, and I just thought, well, if you work in healthcare and if there's no greater place that crying should exist. I mean,
Yeah,
people are losing their lives every day.
exactly.
If that's not an environment that crying should be okay. Now what he was saying is have the grit and determination to not let your emotions take over you. And yeah, you don't want a doctor who's crying,
Right.
examining you. But we've gone so far, and I think if you watch The Pit, I love that show, The Pit. But on
Mhm.
last night's episode, a resident was letting her life stressors interfere with her work. And Dr. Robbie said, when you walk in here, it's like a force field. You leave everything out and you pay attention to the patient in front of you. Like you have to
Right.
be 100% present. And Stacey, that's how I was trained. So when I saw the dead infant, like this, you remain a professional. And that's how we're trained. And yeah, but we've gone so far to the extreme
Yeah.
that we don't acknowledge that we exist outside of those roles
Right.
and we exist as women and men, and why we should have feelings about that and it
Exactly.
should trouble us.
Oh, 100%. One thing I really appreciate about your work is that you don't stop at the individual level. You also talk about the structures that drive depletion. Like, where
Mhm.
do your organizations get this wrong when they try to address burnout?
I think where they get it wrong is taking something that they read about and I'm just gonna call it like I see it, the fluff stuff.
Yeah,
Like cut out the fluff stuff. Um, it's great if you think your staff can't leave a unit and you want to order food for them, but ask them what they want. We are just really good about let's order a muffin tray or a pizza tray or so it's really we're gonna have yoga classes at 5 o'clock on Tuesdays. Well, who's around the hospital? People get off at 3 or 7. So who's going to hang around for 2 hours after work to go to a yoga class? So it's more of developing, like, oh, we have an app and you can go on the app and read a inspirational motto to
yeah,
so it's the things that look good but don't feel good to
right.
people. So be aware of those quick fixes.
Yeah,
you know, I it was so great to hear someone had read my book and said, and she called me and said, I want you to know my boss, I don't know if my boss read your book, but he announced today that they had a board meeting and they have decided to offer us one additional PTO day because the staff have been working so hard over
wow.
through the holiday season.
Yeah,
But we have to take it within 60 days because they want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Something tangible, something that people, that signifies to people, we know you're tired and we're going to give you time and space to rest and
right.
recover. Those simple little, I say simple because a day of PTO costs the organization money, but they're going to get that back because their people are going to stay. They're
Yeah,
not going to leave. When this nurse said, I love my job. I would never leave my job because this CEO saw us. And I thought,
right,
ooh, girl, I need to get that in writing and send a note to him because that's exactly what happens.
right. He looked at the situation and he took to heart about workload, role
Hmm.
clarity,
Hmm.
psychological
Hmm.
safety, recovery practices,
Yeah.
the leadership behavior,
Hmm.
crisis culture, all these
Hmm.
things he took to heart and he realized that, I have to take care of my team,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's a lot, especially for someone in a hierarchy.
Hmm.
They tend to neglect those things or they just don't see it because they're so involved in their responsibilities that the people below them, they tend to get neglected.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, let's make this practical because our audience always wants something that they can take and use. For the person listening right now who knows that they are running on empty, maybe they're a leader, maybe they're a caregiver, maybe they're a person who depends on, where do they begin? What are some likely directions for that guest?
You know, the best thing I would suggest is don't try to boil the ocean in one day.
Hmm.
So let's just identify three things you can do. Um, you can take pauses at work, whether it's a 15-minute break, we all get 15-minute break two times in your lunch, but use those to help your body reset.
Right.
So by that, I don't mean go into the employee lounge and
Yeah.
doom scroll and look at Facebook and watch reels.
Right.
Uh, do things like I use the Calm app and I put in earbuds and for 5 minutes I just close my eyes and help and just start breathing better. So
Right.
a couple of things: find a space. This it could be a many times for me, it's been a bathroom stall, to be honest with you. But
Mhm.
there is space in your work that you can take pauses. Identify three times during the day that you can pause for 15 minutes,
Right.
5 minutes at a time. That's all you need, 5 minutes at a time. The second thing is I would encourage you to invest in learning breathing techniques.
Hmm.
You can search on YouTube. There are tons of breathing exercises. So I'm just going to ask you, please, just for 1 week, try new breathing exercises in the workplace. And you could do that within that 5 minute pause. And then the third thing we often overlook is identify someone who brings you joy.
Hmm.
So identify someone who lifts you up and
Yes.
connect with that person, because it's so, when we are in stress, we tend to align ourselves with people who are going through the same stress as we are. And then
Right.
we're all spiraling down. So
Yes.
to get yourself to stop the cycle, identify one person. It could be a sister, your neighbor, a friend. Just identify one person that when you talk to that person, you always feel lifted, and
Yeah.
do those three things. You do those three things for a week. I promise you're going to start to feel something different.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that answer. And what about organizations? Like, what is, one or two things that a leadership team could start doing differently right now that would
Mhm.
actually support recovery instead of just talking about wellness?
Yeah, listen, hold focus groups, turn your staff meetings into listening sessions. And by that, I don't mean venting sessions, but just a couple of open-ended questions like, what is getting in the way of your work?
Yes.
And what is getting in the way? And organizations own it and do something about it. And
Hmm.
come back in a week and say, we heard you, we did this.
Right.
That's going to go a long way. And I always tell people, you don't treat sepsis without blood work. You shouldn't treat burnout without data.
Yeah.
So I always go back to, there are surveys you can use to really gauge what's happening with your team. But the
Right.
first thing out the gate, be open minded and truly listen with your heart, not just your head.
Hmm.
And with an open mindset, listening that would be an incredible gift you can give your team.
Oh, 100%. I think one of the most healing parts of your message is that you do not pathologic, you don't, pathologies like, for people who are being impacted by prolonged stress, you
Mhm.
really take sensitivity to it. You really, you think about what is the root cause. You just don't like assume that it's this, you normalize the cost of carrying too much for much too long. You realize that people are human. People can't just, you can only handle stress for so long. And then it starts
Yeah.
eating away at your body and it starts breaking
Yeah.
down the walls of your immune system.
Hmm.
And, and then one thing leads to another. And your
Hmm.
story was a testimonial to that. How
Hmm.
do people rebuild without shame? Because I think sometimes people really, they feel shameful that they can't carry it all. They feel like there's, in order for them to show strength, in order for them to be a success, in order for them to fit in today's society and be looked at the quote unquote, successful one, that they have to be able to handle all this stress and do all these things. And how do, when people start to fall apart, because there, you can only hold on, you can only put so much on your shoulders before you start to crumble. How do people rebuild without shame?
I think, I know there's a saying, seek and you shall find. I'm going to reverse that a little bit and say, seek what you cannot find. So
Hmm.
if you cannot find space, comfort, any way, any solutions that you feel you can implement immediately, seek out the answers.
Yeah.
Stacey, your podcast is a perfect example of that. And so today there are podcasts, there's newsletters, you can, you know, TikTok. There's so much connectivity that we don't have to go anywhere. We stay in our home, and I can tell you when I'm working with clients, that's one of the first things they tell me is, I knew I wasn't crazy. I heard about you. I wanted to reach out to you, but before my appointment, I listened to this podcast, and I read Mel Robbins' book. I listened to Stacey's like it's those kinds of things, and that's what I think is key.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this right now, seek what you cannot find,
Right.
and do your own research, be your own advocate, be a warrior.
Yeah.
Nothing. Just that mindset of acknowledging you are a person of resilience and strength, and you've
Right.
made it this far and you keep showing up. So some of it, Stacey, we do have to own as our own well-being. We
Right.
rely on organizations, as they should take care of people who take care of patients and children, but the reality is we have to own what we can.
Yeah.
And so that would be my first thing is, um, don't sit still, take action.
I
And
agree.
yeah,
Now, that is such an important message, especially for high achievers who have built their entire identity around being dependable, strong, and always capable. What does sustainable strength actually look like?
sustainable strength is when you have a routine. That routine, if you look at your week and you have a routine, and I do this with my clients,
Mhm.
um, where are the spaces that you are embodying and you are implementing that take care of you? So if you're going to do movement 10 minutes a day for 5 days, where is it in your schedule? Okay. If you're going to do prayer and meditation for 5 minutes a day, where is it in your schedule? And so when people start being able to look at something that's tangible and say, okay, this is how I'm taking care of myself. And then, some people are checklist people. It's like, okay, I've checked the boxes. One could be, again, connecting with someone who inspires you. And if you
Yeah.
don't have anybody in your life that does that, are there influencers that you follow that will bring you, that will lift you up? Find
Right.
those people. And what I tell people all the time is like, let's just take it. I know some people it's one day at a time. Most of the people I work with want a week at a time. That, it's like my schedule is a week at a time. Okay, let's look at a week at a time. And when you start building that out and at your schedule, and then there's, I do a net gain, net loss. So of
Mhm.
that schedule, where was their net gain in your energy, in your emotions, in your thought patterns? And then where was the drains? And
Right.
then I help people focus on, this is what's draining you. So how do we get out of that? So it's really hard for me to generalize because I do think it's so individual. There's not one right answer to every question, but I
Yeah.
can tell you that that has worked for me and it's worked for my clients. We have to start putting it down on paper or a computer.
I like that. As you look at leaders and organizations today, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is, um, we have an incredible, um, every person I meet who chooses a calling like teaching, law enforcement, healthcare, the helping professions. There is, I want to give you hope by saying that I see you, I feel you. My book, Still Standing, acknowledges you.
Hmm.
And I hope you know that just in for what I am trying to do is ask organizations to lead differently and ask leaders to lead differently. And so I am not the only one. There are many people like me advocating for your cause, advocating with organizations to do things differently. So I want you to know that there is hope. I am seeing it in pockets. It would be unfortunate if it's not happening in your organization. If it's not happening in your organization, start with you first, your team second, and
Right.
then sometimes the organization is the last one to come on board. And
Yeah.
I think that's been every situation I've worked in. It's had to be get yourself straight. What's your sphere of influence?
Right.
Work on that, and then eventually people will say, "Well, the people who work for Laurinda don't leave; they stay."
Yeah.
And she's always in the top percentile on leader effectiveness. Like she must be doing something. Laurinda, share with me what you're doing,
Right.
and eventually that happens.
I love that. Now, if you could leave our audience with one message today about burnout and recovery
Mm.
and what is possible from here, what would that be?
My message would be um, resilience keeps you standing. Recovery keeps you whole. And so, what I would like to leave with the audience is, recognizing that after years of cumulative stress and trauma and strain, you
Hmm.
continue to show up and you're still standing, but you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
There are there are people who love you and care for you and respect you that will help you. There are professionals, coaches, therapists that will help you through that. Um, and I have to tell you, I just want to leave people listening with a message from me that I see you and I honor you in my book. And I hope to one day have conversations with you to hear your stories. Still Standing is about my story, but everyone I know has a story.
Right.
And I'm inspired by those stories.
Yeah. I love that. Now, can you tell everybody a little bit of a synopsis about your book and where they can find it?
Mhm. Still Standing, Leading Wellbeing in Crisis Tested Health Systems is written from the lens of someone who has worked in healthcare and education for more than 3 decades. It pulls from my own experience with cumulative strain and depletion and what it did to my body. But I also understand that my audience, my ideal audience would be leaders who are leading in an organization and
Mhm.
want to do things differently. So I I back up my ideas with evidence. I strongly believe in evidence-based practice. And then I give you practical tools because I know the very busy leader doesn't have time to read a philosophical book. So the
Right.
book is clinical and practical. So the whole back of the book is a toolkit of some tools you can use with your team immediately.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And can you tell everybody about some of the services that you provide?
Absolutely. As we already discussed, I am an author, but I'm on the speaking tour. So I am a keynote speaker. Received my certification through the John Maxwell Leadership Team. Very proud of the work I do with them. And so I'm on the speaking tour. I will be a guest on your podcast. I have an executive coaching practice, and I also offer workshops and training to healthcare systems and education systems. And, just really, I look for opportunities to continue the conversation. So, whatever that looks like, I'm open to it.
I love that. I love that. This has been such an important conversation. And what I appreciate most is that it gives people a new lens. It reminds us that exhaustion is not always a personal failure. Sometimes that is a predictable consequence of prolonged responsibility, unprocessed strain, and systems that, ask too much without giving back enough. And, I think you brought that to people's attention. And I think it needs to be brought to people's attention because I think we are kind of diluted in our own society of what the word burnout is and what the root cause is and that that there are ways to get back on track and there are ways to figure out what to help yourself before it's too late. And I just want to thank you for coming on the show. And you rose above the crisis and you really overcame your own obstacles and now you're here helping so many other people. And before we go, can you tell everybody your URL so they know where to find you on your website?
Well, it's www.standstrongstrategies.org. The book could be found on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And we're working on a YouTube channel right now as well. So please reach out to me. Would love to hear from you. And would be honored if you bought the book and communicated to me, give me feedback, and would love to hear your story.
I love it. This has been an amazing episode. I really thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing your story and sharing your own knowledge and your own wisdom with others to teach others how to cope with, healing themselves within and overcoming trauma in their life. And I just want to thank you so much for doing what you do and being the person you are.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. And you have a great day.
You too.